I'm a very optimistic, positive person. So I discovered about me being depressed in a very funny manner.
Hi, I'm Shoma Chaudhury. Thanks for watching Enquiry. I have a very interesting guest on the show today. Anupam Kher, veteran of 514 movies and many awards, and someone who's just written a book called Your Best Day is Today. It's a book where he reflects upon his experience of the pandemic, his bout of depression, his confrontation with death, his relationship with his mother, and his sense that this was a time when the human race was really laying the foundations for a healed future. I'll be speaking to him about that and much more. I've requested him many times before for an interview. He's never quite agreed, so I'm really delighted to have him on the show. Thank you very much for joining me, Anupam.
I'm so happy to be here finally, Shoma. That I'm sorry that we did not manage to connect earlier. But as they say, "Der I Durust I," I'm here for you now, and matching with your shirt and my shirt.
Yeah.
To the background is so similar, but fantastic. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So it's interesting that you wrote a book during the lockdown, and one of the things you say is that it led to a process of great self-discovery, taking stock, reckonings. So if you were to distill all of that down, what is the one or two big ways in which you feel you've changed?
So I feel that we have been running fast nowhere for a long time. Means we are so busy in our life. Sometimes we are pretending to be busy. Being busy gives us a sense of being alive. So I think this pandemic, this lockdown gave me that it's important to pause. And it's important to physically pause. And when you physically pause, there's a pause that gets created in your mind. And when you have that pause, you become reflective. You reflect on what you're doing. You distill, you clean your system. You clean your whole chart. It's like blood transfusion. It's a transfusion of thoughts. It's you revisit what has been going right for you. You also revisit what was not right about you, not necessarily circumstances and situations.
Yeah.
But that was the most important, one of the most important factors, because I was always told by my friends and my family people that you are very restless. I think it came from the fact that I wanted to do lots of things. I've never taken an off in the last 36, 37 years. And because I feel that I am doing what I enjoy. So what is the idea of taking an off? In my profession, I get to travel all over the world. Yes, when I traveled all over the world as an actor, I did not register. I remember that getting down at the airport, going to the hotel, going to the location. I did not really register because, as I said earlier, that I was just busy. But I just felt that I am not as restless as I am sort of sometimes accused of. I also felt that it's important to listen. We are talking at people rather than talking to people.
Right.
And life is about communication. Life is about talking and listening to the other person. And also, this lockdown made me realize that how much have we cluttered our thoughts, our physical belongings. We don't need all that. The only three things that we need is that, number one, that we need to be closer to the people that we love. Number two, we just need essential commodities, food, khana, pina, kapde. And the third thing, that Wi-Fi should work, because that's what connects you to the world. So that's what I feel.
You just said that it made you sort of come to terms with the fact that you need companionship and you need the Wi-Fi. So inevitably that leads one to a question, being a Kashmiri Pandit, being a Kashmiri, that, there's an entire region in the country that has been without internet connectivity for a long time. And I know your public position is that 370 was good. But do you feel that the internet shutdown there has been, a real denial of rights, and especially having gone through this experience?
But before that thought comes, the denial of people living there for the last 31 years have been thrown out of. That thought comes first. And that thought will continue for 31 years till somebody will actually talk and ask questions about that. That is much more important. When I talked about this, is that without Wi-Fi, you could not do the interview. But there is food. If Wi-Fi is not there, you will still continue with your life. But if you are thrown out of your house and told to live in a refugee camp and become a refugee in your own country, then I think Wi-Fi is not important.
But the other quality you raised was that you really learned to listen and to listen to the other side. And it's an interesting thing that during this pandemic, in fact, there's been a kind of heightened polarization, increasingly across the world. There's extreme polarization of views. You're also identified in a particular, political, though I've seen very interestingly, you said that though you identified as a big BJP supporter, uh, you don't really see yourself as that. You admire Mr. Modi. But there's inevitably a kind of polarization in the country now. Sometimes you've been part of that as well. Do you think this whole experience has, in that sense, expanded your capacity to listen without polarizations?
No, I think you are taking my answers and suiting it to yourself to a broader perspective. We talked about my book and you talked about my personal journey about this thing. Now, what I think you are doing, Shoma, is that you're picking up my answers and adding it to what is going on. So that's a separate issue. If we want to talk about that, that was not what our agenda was. But you are very smartly picking up my answers and sort of bringing it larger issues and bringing in also your interpretation of how you perceive me. Now you have put me into a situation where you have got me here in my chair, giving the pretext of that I'm going to talk to you about your book. But that's not a very fair thing to do. That's why maybe I did not give this interview for so many years.
I'm sorry you feel that, because actually I'm going to keep circling in and out of the book. I thought you'd be very interested to speak about the kind of atmosphere.
I'll just read out the message to you from my manager just now. This is the voicemail message. Good morning, Ramanji. Aapne Shoma se pucha what is the agenda, please? Thank you. His answer is, focus of the conversation will be on Sir and the book only, nothing else. Shoma confirmed.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. I mean, I'll back off. I felt that, when you said that your capacity to listen, I felt
it's not that I don't want to talk about these subjects. I'm just talking about the honesty part of it.
Anupam Kher, I genuinely, because I've read your book, there are phrases in it which I felt would be nice doorways into discussing larger stuff.
You're reading a book which is a motivational book, which is a life coaching book. And from here, you're picking up questions which maybe you want to know an answer about. If that was what I would have spoken to you in any case, you would have, I just feel that you should have told me that I am going to interpret your book and ask you questions which suit you.
Okay. What I will do is, let me stick with the narrow, and then I will ask you if you are happy, because I genuinely will.
I'm not running away from your questions. I am not, you must understand that there is no, I have lived a certain kind of life in a certain way. That is why you know my interpretations of my leanings, etc., because I have let it know. I'm just saying that this was not what we decided. That's it. I'm not ashamed of wanting to be on your show and promoting my book, but you're using this opportunity to ask me questions from my book, which has no reference of context to that, and make it what suits you. That's not fair.
This was not an agenda-driven thing at all. That Wi-Fi thing caught my eye. I wouldn't be a journalist if I didn't ask you that question. It was a good launch to ask that.
So let me ask you this question, since we are talking about it, since we are being honest about it. What are the kind of pieces that you have written or talked about in the last 31 years about the Kashmiri Pandit genocide?
I think it's a very fair question. I think what happened with the Kashmiri Pandits is a real tragedy, a scar in our nation.
When have you raised a question about it?
I also think that the fact that there hasn't been enough discourse, cinema...
But that's the response today when I asked you a question. When have you raised any question about it in the last 31 years? I'm asking you as an individual.
Okay.
We are not talking as we. We are talking as I. You are talking to me, Anupam Kher. You're not talking to a leader of Kashmiri Pandit genocide group. I'm asking you as Shoma, when have you done that?
So you're asking about me individually, right?
Yes.
So I'm saying I have. When I ran Tehelka, we had a big symposium. We did a lot of big issues facing the country. And we had a session devoted to the whole Kashmiri Pandit issue. What I'm saying is that...
Yes, and within 1 minute of my conversation with you, you talked about straight away about the internet not being there in Kashmir.
Yes.
Within 1 per second minute. So I don't think we need to be honest with our own self. My agenda, my leanings, my situation in life is absolutely truthful, straight. You can make out from one mile that Anupam Kher is coming. He's a BJP supporter. He's a Kashmiri, talked about, even though he did not live in Kashmir. He likes Modi, etc. This is his, but that is the way you look at me. But that's not the way I look at myself. I look at myself that I am an Indian supporter. I support the idea of India. And whosoever talks about the idea of India is my favorite.
I think the point you have been making is about that there is a big event which has been unaddressed. It's a wound that lies unaddressed. There's no two ways about that. My question to you really was of a contemporary situation and a phenomenon. So let me cycle back to our earlier question.
Let me answer that question. That Kashmir जैसी जगह में जहाँ पर लोग अपने घर पर रह रहे हैं, जहाँ पर लोग अपने वहाँ पर अगर इंटरनेट नहीं है तो चल सकता है. वो बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है, क्योंकि आप 4 लाख कश्मीरी पंडितों के बारे में बात कर रहे हो, तो उसके रेफरेंस में वो बहुत जो अपने घरों से निकलकर अलग अलग शिविरों में रह रहे हैं या अलग अलग सिटीज में रह रहे हैं, वो प्रॉब्लम उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में इज मच बिगर than a problem of Wi-Fi.
So, and I asked you that question about polarization. I'll come to it later. I want to stick with your personal journey a little bit. One of the things... Yeah. That's why I said I'll know phrases from your book. And if I take you to any larger issue, it'll be from your book. So, one of the things you said also is that this entire time, you had to confront the whole idea of mortality because your mother got COVID, your brother, your niece. But interestingly, you also said that it made you revisit your relationship with your mother. So can you talk about that?
You see, my father was my favorite because my father was more of a friend with me. My mother was strict because I think even though she was uneducated, but she made sure that we study. Not that it really helped. I've never got more than 38% marks in my life. But at least she instilled the value system, the discipline, झूठ नहीं बोलना, etc. ये सब चीजें वो माँ बोलती थी. So I was more friendly with my father. And when my father passed away, exactly 9 years back, they were married for 59 years. And when he passed away, I thought that my mother has not only lost her husband, she has also lost her best friend. She has also lost her partner. She's also lost she has lost a habit, the biggest habit that a person has of being somebody. So me and my brother made a conscious effort to, at the Chautha ceremony of my father, that we celebrate his life rather than mourn his death. So we brought a rock band, we told people to wear colored clothes, we sang songs, and we had a rock band singing, and I told all the funny stories of my father. On that night, my mother said that thank you for doing the way you went about this ceremony, because I feel that maybe I was married to an ordinary man, but an extraordinary person. And that is how I think I became a little more closer to my mother, and we rediscovered our bonding and rediscovered the qualities that she had. In that time, mothers used to take a back seat. It was a father who used to be disciplinary, a father who will do something like that. So that is what I think I meant in this. That's why I make those videos about my mother, which says Dulari Rocks, funny videos where she scolds me, and people love that.
Yeah. So what were the qualities you discovered about her?
I think she is compassionate. She's uneducated, but has a great sense of understanding of life. She has native wisdom. She's forthright, straightforward, loves us, and is very as honest as she can get. And she still does not treat me as Anupam Kher, who has done 518 films. For her, I'm still a bit too whom she could slap anytime.
So, it's interesting you're saying that, because a lot of people now speak of how seminal their mothers or their grandmothers have been. I was doing an interview with Vikas Khanna, and, he spoke about how...
Very close to his mother, yes, of course.
Yes, and grandmother helped him really discover his identity. And then Javed Akhtar was talking about, again, illiterate grandmother, but she actually stopped him having an Islamic education because she said he should have the right to choose, though she was a devout Muslim herself. So the other interesting thing that you said, and you speak about confronting the idea of death, that it used to terrify you earlier, but now you feel liberated. So help us understand that journey. What happened with you?
I am already crossed 60. I'm 65 now. So when you reach 60, I think the idea of death starts creeping in. You feel that, okay, my father lived until he was 84 and I am 60, so I have maybe 24 years left. Or if Clint Eastwood is working at that. So these are the very normal process of thinking about life. You have the luxury of thinking about death. And I used to avoid that topic. I used to avoid talking about it, chhod dena, because that's how you get depressed also. And it's not it was not a very pleasant thought to think about. But in pandemic, I think so many deaths took place, even of my close friends, whether they were actors or whether they were other friends. And also generally overall in the world, that we were talking about death in statistics rather than an emotional loss, a physical loss. That one day I thought about it. How does it matter? You are born and you will die. And so when you confront your fears, sometimes you discover that there is nothing to be fearful about.
So, you of course, that you said that it's liberated you from the fear, but has that changed you in any way? Are you looking at life differently?
It's not that मैं महात्मा बुद्ध नहीं बन गया हूँ जिसने ओल्ड आदमी को पहली बार देखा, जिसको प्रोटेक्ट करके रखा था कि बाहर people age also. It's not that. You become a certain kind of a person from the beginning. I have been a certain kind of a person. It's also you are supposed to identify what you can take away from the book. So what Shoma has taken away from the book is questions which she will ask me in an interview, but which majority of people have taken away from the book is lessons. A brave man does not mean that he does not feel scared. If I say tomorrow I write in, I'm a brave man now because of this whole thing, that once I had facial paralysis and now I went still to the shooting. So that took away the fear of worry about me. My father used to say failure is an event, never a person. That doesn't mean that when I say that, oh, I'm not worried about failure. A happy man does not mean that he's not scared, he's not become depressed. So when I say I'm liberated of this thing, it does not happen in black and white. Just you learn to deal with it.
Another aspect that you touched on was the whole phenomenon of mental health, and you spoke of Sushant Singh Rajput. You got to know him well while making MS Dhoni. And, when you're speaking about mental health, what just now speaking about a message you'd like to put out, what is the takeaways that this whole loss of Sushant brought out into the foreground?
No, first of all, I'm a very optimistic, positive person. So I discovered about me being depressed in a very funny manner. I became an insomniac in the last 4 years back. I could not sleep. I went to sleep studios. I went to Chicago sleep studio. I went to various doctors and I could not sleep. And then one day I went to my eye doctor and I told him, look, I can't sleep the whole night. And in the daytime, I have to face these lights. And can you give me an ointment so that my eyes are have more tear glands? So he looked at me and he very hesitantly told me, he said, Mr. Kher, you don't need an eye specialist. I think you need a psychiatrist. At that time, my first book had just become a #1 bestseller, which was called The Best Thing About You Is You. And I am, as I said to you, I'm an eternal optimist. I laughed. I said, are you crazy? मेरे को क्या साइकेट्रिक प्रॉब्लम हो सकती है? मैं तो बहुत ऑप्टिमिस्टिक पॉजिटिव आदमी हूँ और मेरी किताब देखो, इसमें ये मेरी लाइफ कोचिंग की किताब है. He said, no, I just feel that for the symptom that you're telling me, I would like you to meet a doctor who I know. And if you're hesitant about meeting him in his clinic, go and we can come to your house and you can meet in a mutually agreed place. I said, no, I'll go and meet him. So I went to his Bandra clinic. Now his clinic was that there was a lobby in center and then there was this ENT doctor, tooth doctor, eye specialist, another doctor and also a psychiatrist. So there were people who I was not visibly looking unwell. So they were looking at me, why have I come here and why am I sitting here? I've taken my book with me. In fact, that's the book. So this is the book, The Best Thing About You Is You. And so he looked at me, they said, where are you going while taking selfies with me? So I said, Cuckoo Doctor. So they laughed. So I went to this doctor, Dr. Vishal Sawant, a young, mid-40s. And I said, he said, Mr. Kher, I said, before we continue with my session, tell me your problem. So he started telling me what problem he has, some problem that he had about something. So I tried to solve that in one answer. And I tell me more problems. And he started telling me, we started having a chat. And by the end of 1 hour, I thought I felt solid problems were over. And I said, if you have any other problem, this is the book. You should refer to it, or this is my number, like an arrogant, cocky actor. Because I could not believe that there is something that I need to. And as I was leaving, he started writing something in his pad. I said, what are you writing? He said, your medication. So I was a little surprised. So that's how I discovered that depression is not necessarily about feeling depressed. And sometimes you fight it by being over optimistic. By sometimes you find it by sort of saying, koi baat nahi, main isko solve kar dunga. So I went through this whole medication business for 6 months. And then I thought that I must talk about mental health to the world, because in India there's a taboo. Jaise aap bolte hain, mere ko depression hai ya mere ko these mental problems hain, mental, तो आपको immediately एक category में डाल दिया जाता है. So that's how I discovered, and I now managed to talk about, like in this interview also, the fact that I'm admitting this is what happened. We all need somebody to talk about, because we are in the world where emotions are becoming less and less, and more is taken over by, we have an emoji on phone, rather than actually smiling at somebody, we send an emoji. We are bound to have mental aloofness or mental issues, because I remember I living in a joint family, so there was somebody or the other always there to answer. Today we live in nuclear family. Both parents have to work. The child does not. The child stays with either the maid or some neighbor or something like that. So there are more issues of mental problem, and that's how we need to communicate with the element of compassion or listening.
So was there, typically there's a kind of trigger incident that sets it off. Did that happen with you? Because you're saying you weren't even aware that...
No, I did not. It was, I used to feel I used to start crying watching anything, a reality show. If I see a person, how his family, I will be a chief guest and I will easily start crying, having tears. It was awkward sometimes that I'm giving a lecture in a college or in a school or in a motivational place, and I will, while talking, when I'm talking about my father or anything. So that I think was a trigger point. And then they say that also not able to sleep for so many years is also, the happy juices are over. There are happy juices and sad juices. So happy juices are over. So maybe that's a trigger point. You like darkness, there is no sense of joy sometimes. But I never felt those symptoms. My only symptom was that when I reflected it later after Dr. Sawant told me, was that I was not sleeping and I used to easily get emotional about things.
And how long did this period last? Did just medicine sort it, or did you see?
So I took medicine for 6 months, and then I said, no, I must deal with it on a personal fight. I didn't want to be dependent on them, because also they used to make me feel groggy. And I had to work, and I found it a little sometimes difficult, though doctor had told me that iska dose kam kar sakte ho, etc., etc. Also, you will be able to sleep better. But after 6 months, I started going regularly yoga. I started transforming myself physically. I started going for walks. I started weight training, and then the things became better. I still can't sleep very well, but at least I don't need medication, and I also try to be as happy as I can. I live with people. I go to people who I can chat with, and I avoid news, and I avoid newspapers.
The sad part is you're saying things which naturally would make me want to ask you, and that's because I'm interested in your opinion.
I said it to you so that you can take the bait and ask me the question you're dying to ask.
Okay. As long as you don't feel I'm being dishonest, I would hate you to feel that.
That was to clear a point. Problem is people stereotype people. What you did was you stereotyped me in a certain manner. That this is what Anupam Kher represents. You did not want to actually know for yourself what Anupam Kher is like. Let me just find out. Let me just clean the slate and have this actual inner desire to find out whatever my thought about Anupam Kher is that true or not? You could have discovered it at the end of this interview. Maybe your opinion about me would have changed. But because you come because I did not think of you that you were the Helka reporter. So I think when you meet somebody all over again, just clean his or her aura from your preconceived notions, because people do change. Now you ask me that question.
So again, just leading from this, when you said about news.
The glee in your eyes. You know, like पकड़ा गया. अभी मैं पूछती नहीं थी, पर पूछिए.
No, it's just that there is. Actually, let me bring you into it from a different direction, which is.
No. Please ask me the way you are thinking about. Don't mollycoddle. Just go ahead. I'm capable of taking care of myself.
Grown man. So, when you said you stay away from news, I wanted to ask you that the Sushant Singh episode was it was depressing. It was tragic, polarizing. It was a horrible incident. It's also the discourse that happened around him that, it's amazing that you're admitting to the fact that you have faced a bout of depression, because the thing that happened was people were making it seem that if you are accomplished, if you are successful, there's no way that you can be depressed or you can take your life. So that's what I wanted you to comment on, that what is your thoughts about the way the story played out in the media, the assumptions that happened, and the polarization that happened around that death?
Well, I think all over the world, media does, and I have a lot of friends in media, including you now. Unfortunately, negativity sells. What used to be, why have I stopped reading? Because in the night, why should I sleep thinking about that the world is the worst place to live in? There are 50 channels, suppose 50 main channels in India. After every 15 minutes, there is a breaking news, and breaking news is never about good things. The negativity sells, and that is unfortunate. That's what happened, because nobody actually knew what happened with Sushant. He could be depressed. Of course, he could be depressed. Success can be depressing because you're lonely. It was sensationalized. It went completely out of control. It went haywire. Everybody was used into it, and the whole section of media got involved. It's like Meet John Doe, that film, which was made in Hindi called Main Zinda Hoon with Mr. Bachchan. It's also a business, na? It's become a game of TRP. It's become how many ads will come into a program. It's money oriented. I don't exactly know the meaning of polarization, but that is how it sums up maybe.
But just actually to put it on record, that even to run this channel, someone who really knows the technology, the algorithms of, YouTube, Google, advice saying that heighten the mood and the emotions in your show and it'll do well. So I want to tell you on record that I said that is not what I want the show to be.
What is special about it? That's why, frankly speaking, that is why I agreed to do this, because like you have a preconceived idea. I also had a preconceived idea. And then in the last few months, I discovered that, no, this is a different way of going about it. So that's that. Now that makes you different. Being cool, according to me, for a long time, being cool was being bitchy. Being cool was about being negative. To me, now the new definition of cool is punctual, honest. So me, the definition of cool changes. Now, there's another friend of mine who does called a slow interview.
Yeah. Nilesh. Yeah.
Nilesh. It's a joy now to talk to him. So I think what we were talking about, mental depression, and then because of that, the hype that Sushant's, if you go through my Instagram page, I have a 12-minute speech where I've spoken about how it can affect anybody. And unfortunately, it was very unfortunate that it happened the way it happened.
So, and I'm going to now keep caveating every question because I'm asking. You have said in your book that you feel that during this time, the foundation for healing the world was laid and that we were writing our futures. And in that one, I'm going to come to ask you that, in what ways you feel the world needs to be healed. But because we're talking about the media, that this thing about, extreme views, polarization, it creates popularity, it creates audience. But I am going to ask you specifically about Arnab, because he's become so much the face of a certain kind of journalism. As a friend, as someone you've been a supporter of his, do you feel if he would just mellow down his positions and not be so polarizing, do you think that you would advise him on that?
So I think the first thing that I would like to say, that any kind of discovery, self-discovery, happens from when it comes from within. It's not fair on me to comment on somebody the way he wants to go about it. And if I don't agree with him, he being a friend, I will tell him personally on the phone rather than discuss his style. I certainly can say that he is an India-loving person. He has a strong point of views. Maybe he should. Maybe he will himself go through this whole discovery, analysis of himself, and change. We all change. The change is a possibility in everybody's point of view. I think this whole pandemic has changed the world. When you talk about the healing the world, because we discovered that we are not only inhabitants of this Mother Earth. We forgot, in our greed to become somebody, in our greed to chasing dreams and wanting things, we forgot that there are animals, there are nature. Look at what happened yesterday in Chimolia. It's so, to change hota hai, it does not get revealed overnight. If you want to see a change in people, give them time. Today, what we need, what we require, or what we look for is overnight change. What I was 20 years back and what I'm now, if that is what evolvement is all about. So we unfortunately in today's time, we bracket people into molds. This is a mold. And then sometimes people want to be like that. But that's not in human nature. It's possible that you may change for the betterment.
I think what is very disturbing is when one immediately pigeonholes people with names, so you're not interested in combating opinion with fact and evidence or argument, but you immediately just blacklist them. The urban nakshal, or there's the Khan Market gang, Tukde Ke Tukde gang. So there are these words which immediately become
words for me also, darling. We have to live with that. I'm a bhakt. I am Modi ka chamcha. So everybody. So ऐसा नहीं कि आप ही के लिए हो रहा है, ये तो सबके लिए. We live in those times. So ये तो है. But by the way, to viewers, I just want to tell that we are promoting this book called Your Best Days Today while we are talking about other things. Please keep this portion in the interview. This is a book which I wrote about optimism, and the title came from my mother. She used to drop us to the school when we were in 5th or 4th standard, me and my brother. And at the school gates, used to say in Kashmiri, "Jon azuk do chusane ko John, your best days today." Now,
yes, so I'm going to circle right back to the book. As I felt that a lot of these issues are actually embedded in what you're writing in your book. So when we're just talking about introspection and what this 1 year has taught us, in that, would you say that you personally, just speaking for yourself, would you step back from just immediately framing people in these shorthand, reductive sort of ways?
I personally don't. There's a machinery which does from all the sides, not necessarily you are being called so and so. There's a machinery which is calling me also. As individual, I don't think if we meet tomorrow or we are right now meeting, I'm sure I'll come to and have possibility of having dinner or tea or whatever it is. So the categorization is not done by individuals. I recently went to somebody's house in Delhi, and there was this gentleman who in the past has shown me that he does not like me. But I had nothing against him. So that's what evolvement is all about. That's what education does. But it also, the world tries to stereotype because it's comfortable for them. Stereotyping is comfortable for people. अब वो तो सोशल मीडिया से पोलराइजेशन आएगा ही. आप किसको फॉलो करते हैं उससे पता लग जाएगा कि आपकी लीनिंग किस तरफ है. मैं किसको फॉलो करता हूँ ट्विटर पे, उनसे पता लग जाएगा मेरी लीनिंग क्या है. बट द पॉइंट इज, एक जमाने में पहले होता था कि anybody who votes goes behind that hidden place and votes is already endorsing a political thought. political philosophy. But that was not, nobody was holding that against him or her. But आप जब पीछे जाते हो और मतदान करते हो तो आप एक क्लियर आप क्लियर हो कि मैं कांग्रेस को वोट दे रही हूँ, सपा को दे रही हूँ या बीजेपी को दे रही हूँ, तो आपके मन में क्लियर, बाहर आकर आप फिर या मैं बाहर आकर हम दोस्त बन जाते हैं, वो सब दैट्स इट. बट नाउ दैट स्टेज हैज कम ऑन टू द फोरफ्रंट. फॉर एग्जांपल आप मुझे बोलते हो कि मैं मोदी जी को बहुत पसंद करता हूँ. There is a certain section of people who are refusing to see that he is doing anything good. अगर कल को राहुल गांधी एक चमत्कार हो जाए कि वो अकलमंद बातें करने लगे, सोच समझ के बातें करने लगे, I'm sure as a person he is a wonderful person. I'm not passing a judgment on him. वो देश के बारे में बात करें, इसके बारे में करें, I'm sure the world will go for him. At the end of it, you must understand कि 3 सीटें अगर बीजेपी की थी और आज 303 है, तो उसका क्या रीजन हुआ? अब इन्होंने सिर्फ हिंदुत्व कार्ड खेल के तो नहीं हुआ होगा ना. और अगर कांग्रेस इतनी ज्यादा सीटें जीतती थी और आज ये हाल हो गया, कि आपको क्या लगता है, सिंस वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट, कि कांग्रेस में राहुल गांधी के अलावा एक भी अक्लमंद आदमी नहीं है जो बन सकता है प्राइम मिनिस्टरियल कैंडिडेट? एक भी आदमी नहीं है. सो अगर आप दुनिया को चेंज करना चाहते हो तो पहले अपने आप को चेंज करो. समटाइम्स आर्ग्यूमेंट इज वेरी वेरी प्रोडक्टिव. आर्ग्यूमेंट जो है वो बहुत जरूरी है. आर्ग्यूमेंट एक तो अपने जिंदा होने का एहसास कराता है, और आर्ग्यूमेंट के पीछे चालाकी नजर नहीं होती है. आपको उन लोगों से डरना चाहिए जो आपको हमेशा मुस्कुराते हुए मिलते हैं. जो बीच बीच में गुस्सा हो जाते हैं ना, दैट मींस दे आर रियल पीपल. एनीबडी हु यू मीट एज दिस आई एम टेलिंग यू एज एन एडवाइस, not that you need one. You should be aware of people who will agree with you in every topic.
So if we're going to run out of time, this question where you said that this was a time for healing and of writing the future, so in what particular ways did you feel the earth, that we as a race or the earth needed to be healed?
We were never thought that worldwide we will have something like this. आज इतनी एडवांसमेंट है हमारे पास, एवरी टेक्नोलॉजी इज देयर, वी आर सेंडिंग पीपल, द वर्ल्ड इज सेंडिंग टू मंगल, एंड पीपल आर वांटिंग टू हैव इन द स्पेस कॉलोनीज एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा. मेरी आर्मी इतनी बड़ी है. लुक एट द काइंड ऑफ पीपल हु सफर्ड द मोस्ट, यूरोप एंड अमेरिका इन दिस पैंडेमिक. हमने तो फिर भी जैसे जैसे गुजारा कर लिया. हीलिंग हैपेंस व्हेन यू स्टार्ट थिंकिंग. वी हैव स्टॉप्ड बीइंग कंपैशनेट. व्हेन आई से अबाउट हीलिंग, it's not a physical healing, it's the mental healing. And only when mental healing, when people, individuals change, they change the world, according to me. And in every field it will happen. It will happen that today, first time when I came here, when it was a total lockdown, I had never realized that there are birds who chirp in front of my house. I had never heard a कोयल की कूक नहीं सुनी थी. ये इस दौरान मैंने सुनी. So I thought this was the silver linings in this dark cloud of this. So this world will heal. I'm an eternal optimist. For me, this is, I'm saying 5th time, for me the ultimate definition of optimism is nothing is all wrong. Even a clock that has stopped running is correct twice a day. तो होप ही है. होप बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. अगर हम होप ही निकाल देंगे अपने जीवन से तो फिर तो कुछ भी नहीं होगा. तो मुझे होप है कि वर्ल्ड विल बी a healed place. कश्मीर will be a healed place, but it will take a little time. एंड जो कश्मीर की प्रॉब्लम है, मैं उधर के जो residents हैं उनके लिए my heart goes out to them, because they should also benefit the kind of infrastructure luxury that the rest of the world is enjoying. Why should they be used by 5-6 separatists whose own children have gone abroad or gone to bigger cities and they are using this? When I talk about Kashmiri Hindus, it is not, of course I feel bad for them because they are my family, but that doesn't mean that I am inhuman towards the other inhabitants of Kashmir. I feel there is so much scope. There should be IIT there should be medical colleges, there should be jobs, so that they also have the greatest joy of living in an advanced country.
So, you've spoken so many times about being an optimist. This period, the pandemic, is something that universally everyone shared. But would you share an experience from your personal life where you've had to encounter anything that has got you down, despair, and you've pulled yourself out of it with your temperament?
My mother got COVID positive, and my brother got COVID positive, and my niece and Bhabhi. I was in the same testing thing and I was negative. It made me feel guilty. Worst part was that my mother we could not visit her in her ward. My brother, for his own reasons, who she thought was Anupam Kher is my son and he's a very powerful man, people love him, etc. But she was upstairs. And every time I was depressed, I used to sit in the lobby of the hospital. And then there was this lady who was sitting one seat away from me. And she looked at me and she said, don't worry, your mother will be fine. So I said, "Aap यहाँ पर कैसे हैं?" कहती, "My husband is admitted seriously with a liver problem." So at that time, she forgot her trauma and her tragedy and concentrated more, not on me as an actor. She didn't want to take a picture with me. Behind my mask also, she recognized me. She wanted to make me feel better. So there is amazing possibility of goodness in people. It's just that we need to recognize it. मेरी बड़ी अच्छी लाइन थी डैडी फिल्म में कि सच को सच बनाने के लिए दो लोगों की जरूरत होती है, एक जो सच बोल सके, दूसरा जो सच सुन सके.
That would actually be a cinematic line to end on, but because you're an actor, you're an artist, and you're someone who, of course, all your roles are comic, but you also said you have a comic vision of the world.
Yes.
So, again, I'd be wrong if I didn't ask you your views on just the mahal of censorship, that increasingly...
बहुत सारी प्रॉब्लम्स हुई हैं. हिंदुस्तान की खासियत यही है कि हम 1000 साल लोगों के राज के बावजूद भी हम इमर्ज करें विक्टोरियस, बिकॉज हमारी बुनियाद बड़ी पुख्ता है. 800 साल मुगलों ने हम पर राज किया था, सब कुछ चेंज कर दिया था, तहस नहस कर दिया था. 200 साल हमारे ऊपर अंग्रेजों ने राज किया और 70 साल में हम कहां से कहां पहुंच गए. बहुत अच्छी बात, कोई ऐसी प्रॉब्लम नहीं. हमारे अंदर एक खासियत है, we will survive this, we will come out of it triumphant, we will come out of it a better people. हिंदुस्तान की अपनी एक खासियत है, हमारी जो परंपरा है, जो हमारे जो रूट्स हैं, वो इतने सॉलिड हैं कि ये कोई इस तरह की चीजें टेंशन नहीं करेगी. Just because you read a lot, we get to read different opinions, doesn't mean that we actually believe in it. At the end of it, we are a great nation and we will continue to be like that.
Would you accept that one of its core strengths is plurality? So being Anupam Kher, like you said, your mother believes in you to be a powerful person. Would you add your voice to the calming of our country? That logon ko anti-national na bole, bhakt na bole, censorship na hoye. As an artist, do we not thrive in plurality?
I do that, but I also learn to live with it. I do that. I make a difference. If you follow me on social media, you will discover that I only talk about things which will change the world. If you go through my Instagram, there are lots of efforts that I have. But for that, you have to look at me from a different prism. You have to look at me of a possibility that maybe he is not what I think of him. And I hope that has changed after this interview. As individuals, we must allow other people to sort of maybe this is a stance he or she is taking, but इसके पीछे तो एक सच्चा इंसान है, because all these people are somebody's father, somebody's mother, somebody's brother. So as relationships, they change. Like you change with your relationship, I change with my relationship. So we should not put people in slots. That is what is important. I think we will survive this. अमृत मंथन होता है. अमृत मंथन में विष भी निकलता है और अमृत भी निकलता है, but उससे फर्क पड़ता है. वो रास्ता ही क्या जो पथरीला ना हो. जो रास्ता स्मूथ है उस पे चलने का कोई मजा ही नहीं आएगा आपको. शुमा, any road, when you reach a destination, look back, this was a very smooth road, you will say, oh my god, I didn't do anything. It has to have blocks, it has to have ups and downs, it has to have khai, it has to have kanta, तभी तो निकल कर हम बाहर निकल के पहुंचेंगे. What is biopic? When you see biopics of so many people, whether it's Milka Singh or whether it is that teacher or whether anybody else, you see there, or I was yesterday sent by Anil Kapoor, the biopic of a small little thing of Kentucky Fried Chicken, का जो main guy है. So you, at the age of 65, he discovered when he was about to commit suicide that no, there is much more to life. So hope तो last दिन तक रहनी चाहिए. और वो रास्ता जिसमें पथराव ना हो, जिसमें मतलब पथराव not पथराव, जिसमें पत्थर ना हो, पथरीला ना हो, वो चलने का मजा ही कुछ और है. अब मेरी जर्नी में बोल दूं कि जी मैं बड़ा आसान हो गया था मेरे को. आज बार मैं ओवरडू समटाइम्स कि मैं क्लर्क के क्लर्क का बेटा हूँ, मेरे घर में 14 लोग थे, मैं 27 दिन रेलवे प्लेटफॉर्म पे सोया. I enjoy that because that also shows me my grit and my destination and my journey. On that note, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Anupam.